Andrew Berry, the Browns GM, tried to tell reporters at the Senior Bowl last week that he will not trade Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett came out today with his own statement. And he has officially requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns, he announced in said statement. So what do you do if you're the Browns? And how far do you take this if you're Myles Garrett? Because he's making it known that all the individual accolades are great, but I'm here to get to a Super Bowl, and like everybody else in the world, you look at the state of the Cleveland Browns, and that's not happening during the rest of his career.
Yep. No, I understand that. I think it's a lot easier in this day and age to force your way out of any situation. I mean, by not just showing up. I mean, I think guys, you always look at the money that you're leaving on the table when you do this, but you have to do it. If you want to be out, you have to, I'm not showing up at all. Right. And so then you end up having just this vacancy, this distraction that takes away from it, especially if you take them, your cues from what NBA players do. I know the NFL is fighting as hard as they can not to allow NFL players to kind of take this, but certain guys have that status.
Butler, excuse me.
Yeah, they just have that type of status. Yep. And Myles Garrett is one of those guys where if he takes a true hard stand on getting out of there, he won't be there next year because it's just not worth keeping him around with all of that void. You want to move on, probably can get a ton of value for him if you want to make your football team better, right? Especially when you think about what happened with the Deshaun Watson contract and trying to be able to recover from that, you want to have multiple picks, a lot of talent, which is going to take to get a type of guy, Myles Garrett, especially if you think about the Arizona Cardinals trying to pick a guy like that up.
So this guy has 2 years left on his contract right now, wants to be traded. So when you evaluate the player, what do you see? What do you see from him as the edge?
The dude is different, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen Myles Garrett or walk up to him, right? He looks big on TV. It's another thing to see him in person and next to him. This dude is just a monster. Big, strong, athletic, physical. He's flexible, multiple. He's a guy that can slide inside if you need to. If you want to go third down, rush package, obviously he can play defensive end at a high level. Great dude from all the teammates that I know that I've played with him. Love him, work hard. He wants to win. And so it's a no-brainer from that standpoint, right, when you're evaluating. He's 29, right, still young in this league. And still going to be a double-digit type sack dominant guy. So that's somebody that you want to bring in here. And I know we talked about this maybe a couple of weeks ago. Like, who were those top-tier guys that you could bring in that you still is going to give you value but also help your team? And he's that type of guy that's going to make these young guys better, obviously make your defense better. And I feel like if you take that contract that was done a couple of years ago, right, the cap is continuing to go up. So you'll be fine, I think, financially, too, if you look at it from that standpoint as well, where you're kind of getting a steal for a guy that's starting to get into his 30s where, obviously a lot of GMs start kind of a little hesitant. But I think because of who he is and what he's done and how much juice he still shows, he's a good guy that you will want to pick up and have on your team.
5 years, $125, but no guaranteed money left on the deal.
There you go.
Here's two questions. And you're right about Myles Garrett. Just Paulie Pencilneck on the sideline. He reminds me like a Julius Peppers.
Yeah.
Like, dude is just enormous. Enormous. There are NFL players, and then he's a notch head and shoulders above guys. Crazy. And then the athleticism. Here's the thing. If you're the Arizona Cardinals, what are you willing to pay? There's quarterback, and there's get to the quarterback. The two most important things in the game of football. What do? You had a team that had 17 different guys with at least one sack apiece. How valuable is one guy who can get you 17 sacks?
It's significant because it allows those other guys that had those, single digits to maybe increase their numbers because a lot of attention is going to go to them. So now you have more one-on-one options maybe for your second-tier guy, right? You have a guy like Denard Robinson that maybe if has a double team, he's no longer seeing a double team. Now you're having a single because he's going to get all the attention. You can dictate where the center's going to turn almost every single time, and so you just can play the game a little bit more cerebral from that standpoint when you have a dominant player on one side and really take advantage of protections as you go into a football game. So it's going to make your team better, and you won't have to necessarily blitz as much. So you can then make the quarterback hold the ball and give that extra tick for guys that need it to be able to get to the quarterback as well.
For me, Paulie, too, once again, I would disagree with your assessment. It's quarterback and then get to the quarterback, Paulie. I don't believe that. I still believe the line of scrimmage. This is just me. You better be able to stop the run because if you don't stop the run, you're toast. Period. You don't even have to. You might have Myles Garrett, but if you can't stop the run, you're demoralized. You got Jack. So, anyways, Basin audience, let's go ahead and clean
I'm going to argue that later, but I'm not going to detract from Zoe's time right
I can't
now.
wait to argue you on that one right there. But where do you see him playing more, Zoe? He's an edge guy. He's a true edge guy, right? Even though he's big enough to come down, play a 3 technique.
And I'm talking about on third downs, you do that. So you slide him down. If you want to get a couple of your other guys, depending on who's coming back, a Dennis Gardeck or Argilari, some guys on the outside, some of those young boys that may fit better as edge rushers, and then you move him and Robinson on the inside. Right now, you got an opportunity to run some games with those guys versus the center and the 2 guards, right, and leave the edge rushers one-on-one outside. So those are the things that you're able to do. This gives you a lot of flexibility with a guy that's that big, that athletic, that versatile to move him around, find the fish, right? Sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right. It just gives you a lot of flexibility, and you can dictate a lot of times, like I said, with the protection. Like, I know they're sliding the Myles, so I'm about to run a certain game over here that's going to allow us to come free, and then that's when you start having other guys play above what they look like on paper.
Huge.
Because you have a game changer on the other side that the team has to respect, and if you don't, he going to eat you up.
That's right.
I used to go up to Calais Campbell all the time on Fridays before a game. You say, all right, who's the fish this week, Calais? Who's the fish? Who's the liability? Who's the weak link in the opposing offensive line?
Paulie.
And he'd give me a headbutt or a little stiff arm and get away from me. Here's my question. When you look at the Cardinals defense, and the mad scientist Nick Rawlis last year, how he had to dial up all these crazy type schemes. There were times where I called it 11-card pickup. Just 11 guys walking around, okay? Instead of forcing an offense to answer who, when, and where is the pass rush coming, how valuable is it to just have them try and answer how? How do we stop an all-pro type player like Myles Garrett? And how much is he worth at age 29? First player ever, by the way, to have 4 straight seasons of 14 or more sacks. I mean, he's still playing some really good football.
It's worth a lot. I mean, and 29 is not 29, and you got to continue to kind of switch this up. It's not 29 when Wolf played or when I first got in the league. The game is just different. Practices are different. I mean, I can't even describe to you. I feel a little weird just talking about it. Like, I get almost PTSD, like thinking about what football used to look like and what we had to do in training camp. Like, my body's like, no, what are you talking about? Do we have to do that again?
Because you are the bridge.
It is
you
real.
You are the bridge.
Now, that's why you can play a lot longer. You have guys that can go into their mid to late 30s. I was one of those guys. Myles Garrett is on a whole nother skill level, talent-wise. In the ability to play football at a high level, much older. So 29, 30 is really not, you're not old to me because of the mileage and the practices that you've had to have. So I just don't even worry about that, right? And his production has been fine. So I'm all in on bringing in a guy of that nature and his leadership and how he's going to make people around him. And to your point, then Nick Rawlis doesn't really have to think about how do I get creative. It takes so much pressure off of you as a coordinator where I have to figure out ways to get things open. And then when you put more in, guys got to know more, understand more. So then you potentially can play slower, have more bust. When you can make your defense as simple as possible because you have the guys that can go out there and win one-on-ones or even be in double team like Myles Garrett can, it just simplifies everything. Everybody can play faster, and typically you have a more impactful defense because of it.
Yeah, and I love that. If you go out and you sign him as a free agent, if in fact the Arizona Cardinals could somehow, some way pull that off, that would be awesome because then you could draft Tyler Booker. You could draft him, the kid out of Alabama.
What if Andrew Berry and the Browns say, you want Myles Garrett? Great. You got to take Deshaun Watson.
Oh.
And that contract. Hey, which players...
Thanks for watching Wolf and Luke. Tap to see more and click the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.